pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
Recording in
indivisible,
progress.
with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the first item on the agenda tonight is the fire chief search and interview, and Evan will,
Yeah, do you mind if I lead off?
please.
Okay. So the fire chief search committee, we got down to 11 candidates. We then invited those 11 candidates to get to step 2, it's called. Step 2 whittled that down to 9, so there was 2 people that withdrew at that point. So we have 9 people in step 2. We will be interviewing all 9 of them between the nights of the 15th and the 16th, so tomorrow and Thursday. With the goal of narrowing that down to 5 candidates or less. If we had less, that's okay too, but 5 or less. Those 5 will then go through a assessment center, it's called, which is really just they come for a day and get, peppered with questions and take tests and do writing samples and all that stuff. That will take place here on October 1st, and I haven't talked to the committee about that because that just got set up today, and I'm doing all the logistics for that. So those 5 or few people will come. They'll be in 2 different conference rooms. They'll be split up. Part of it's writing and part of it's orals, and we'll provide lunch and all of that stuff. And they'll be here from 7:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Then the board will get the results of that assessment center to use as part of your framework for moving forward the top 3 candidates that we want to bring in here. So as soon as the assessment center results come back, I think we can reasonably set up a time when they're going to come and be interviewed by the select board. We will work with Badge Quest to craft some questions for you that are kind of standard for fire service stuff. It'll be great. We'll solicit questions from each of you, some of your, to pick your top 2 questions you'd like to do. And then we can go from there. So I anticipate it'll be very similar to the way it was when I was hired through Paradigm, that same feel. We'll just have to decide if you want Bob Pomeroy to do the questioning like Bernie Lynch did for me, or if you want to take turns and go around the line. But those I think are logistics that you can work out, as it's closer. I don't think there needs to be a decision on that today. So that's really where we are. I think we have, we'll get down to 5 pretty strong candidates, I think, and the assessment center will help shake some of the rest of that out. But it's pretty exciting. The initial interviews taking place tomorrow night and Thursday night are, it's all 9 candidates, 30 minutes apiece. I've got it down to 17 questions. I'm trying to pair.
17 and 30 minutes? That should be easy.
Yeah. So I'm paring that down even further. So the board or the committee sent their questions in. Now I'm trying to collate them into kind of a structure and get down to maybe 10 to 12. That would be kind of our target. And I'm not even close. But tomorrow I'll be done with it one way or the other. So, but I think we're making good progress. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think you will be too. Did I leave anything out, Tori?
No, I just, so a couple of things, and I guess this is questions for discussion.
Oh, yes.
That's okay?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay. So, is 3 okay, do you think, for presenting to the board, I guess is the first question. So hearing our timeline from step 2, that we have 9 candidates now, we want 5 for the assessment center. Would the board like to see or interview all 5 of those candidates, or breaking it down to 3, which was our original intent? I just figured we'd touch base on that to start.
So for me, I'm happy with 3, unless there's a 4th that is really compelling. Maybe a little bit different, outside of the box. I don't know who the candidates are. I don't know who we're getting.
Right.
But if we've got 3 solid that everyone's happy with, then clearly kind of stand above the rest. I'm happy with 3, but I also don't want to exclude the 4th or 5th if they're all equally good.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Great answer and good to know.
I would agree with that. I imagine the assessment will help to give some of those answers too, where it's just either very obvious or not obvious, and then that's just
a good problem to have, I
Yeah.
imagine.
Right.
Okay, good. And then my second question, which is probably getting way ahead of ourselves, how long for the interviews, for the final interviews? And I guess one of my questions would be, what's the interview process with the board? Are we interviewing them once? Are we interviewing some finalists twice? An hour? What are we looking at in terms of that process?
You know, my recommendation would be to follow pretty much the same system that you did with me, which I think was 45 minutes or an hour. Can't remember. Felt like 2 minutes, really, to be honest with you. Don't even remember what I said by the time I was done. And then, so I would say no more than an hour per. And then, you know, realistically, I like we'll have done successive interviews. So, you know, we're going to give you decent candidates. So if you can do it in one, I think that's reasonable.
So,
Now, just to preface that, if we did have, let's say, 4 or 5 that were very strong, I think my recommendation would be you go to two interview process, right?
Yep.
But if it's down to 3, I think you can reasonably do that with an hour per candidate.
I'd agree with that.
Me
Yeah.
too. It's good.
So in terms of preparation, what's sort of the packet of material that we're going to get to, you know, from the assessment center and anything else that?
Yeah.
Good question.
So there's you'll get their resumes, you will get their application, and you will get their written answers to questions that we had provided them ahead of time.
Okay.
I think it was 10 questions that we wound up sending off to them, and they all had to write in 5 pages or less their responses to those questions. So you'll get those as well.
Got it.
And then anything else you request. I mean, we can get anything you want.
Will we be meeting with Badge Quest prior to these interviews just to kind of prep us on the process?
Yeah, we can certainly set that up without
That'd
an
be
issue.
great.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I'd also like to recommend the whole board sees the internal survey that was done too.
Yes.
Of those
Yep, we can
recommendations.
put
I
that
think
up
that should be part of the packet as well.
Yeah, it was kind of a low response rate. Well,
Yeah.
kind of yes and kind of no. We got 14 responses to our internal survey. It's not a great number, but it's also not really unexpected for doing a survey of a fire service. I don't think that's alarming in any way. And so we can share those results with you as well. The only things that will need to be decided, and maybe we can do this, we can invite Mr. Pomeroy in to a meeting. You'll also need to discuss residency requirements.
That was my third question. Good.
Okay. When you said I have a couple things, I was like, oh, I forgot that. Residency requirement is something that we'll have to discuss as part of. We need to know that before you interview and then negotiate, because I think that'll be a question that'll need to be asked.
So the committee has talked about that and really wants the board to make a decision on whether or not, like, what's the, obviously there's a lot of pros to having the fire chief live in town.
Yep.
But it could also be a, mile radius of how, like how far away can they live and still perform the duties of a fire chief, so.
I see.
Yeah, the one of the trends is 15 miles. Usually, I see that a lot.
Okay.
I've seen some 10s, but a lot of it's 15 miles from the border.
Yep.
And then other places, because you find candidates that you really like are willing to do more than that. So it depends on what the vision of the fire department is. So there's some places that the chief does mostly administrative functions, trains his folks up really well, doesn't need to be on scene for every single incident that occurs. There's, unless it's a X incident or larger, they're not calling the chief, and the staff are handling that. And there's other communities that they say, no, you need to be within our borders and be able to respond, because we have a small department and we need that. And so I think that's something that the board will have to weigh.
Okay. So I thought what I read in the fire study was that we were going to have a core of 4 full-time staff, and they were going to be the primary daytime response for any incidents that happen in town. Is that still the thinking?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had any conversation. Well, it's not within the purview of the committee to discuss that. We discuss some of those things, and then Dorian and I steered the committee away from that because
Yep.
that's not really within that purview. I think that's something that needs to be discussed, but I also think that's something that should be discussed, with the next chief.
Sure.
Agree.
Because while that study it's a very good and thorough study, it was done in 2018. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but things have changed in the fire service and things are evolving in the fire service as far as what a call department looks like. And so I think that'll have to be a conversation. I don't know that I'd want to offer an opinion before the next person who's going to be chief has an opportunity to look at how everything works here and decide or weigh in on how that's going to play out.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Are the candidates expecting a certain mile radius to be presented to them at some point? I guess I'm wondering if I was applying for a job, I would have wanted to know that expectation prior, or is that very common to find out after the fact?
I think it's not common to find out after the fact, but I would be very surprised if any of them found it surprising.
Okay.
Realistically, and it's we had this discussion at one of our meetings about the job posting and these two words I didn't think should have gone in, and I thought we were going to drop this. And one of the things that I tried to get across to folks is that when you are applying to be a fire chief or a police chief or a town administrator, you've already decided, regardless of what those little words are, whether you're going to apply or not. I mean, when I applied to Grafton, I read the posting, I saw the salary, I figured out how long it would take me to get to work, and then decided to apply. Because I know what a town administrator does, and it's the same thing with a fire chief, and it's the same thing with a police chief. There's going to be those little nuances, but they're already aware that they can't live in New Hampshire and be the fire chief of Grafton.
Right.
They know that.
But they could
Sure.
live in
Rhode
Millbury.
Island.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially with the primarily call
Yep.
department, right? So it'd
Right.
be different if it was a larger city or whatever. Then you're gonna have more staff to be able to handle those incidents.
Right. Right. And I think, if you talk to Chief Crapo, he and I have had conversations about this. I mean, when he was hired, he moved to Grafton.
Yeah.
And he did that because that's what was expected. And I don't think that anyone would find that surprising. I think the thing you have to think about and look at is, what are barriers to entry to moving to Grafton, right? And so
Housing market's kind of nuts.
the housing market's kind of nuts. So are we going to say, no, you have to move to Grafton and potentially lose a good candidate instead
Right.
of saying you can be within 15 miles or, they come and say, well, I found a place that's 20 miles. Is that 5 miles going to make a difference to you? Maybe not. So maybe that becomes a negotiable part of that contract conversation of what the board finds to be a reasonable distance away. And I think that'll be something that you'll kind of weigh out as we go.
Okay.
Or as we get. And that might be something actually that would work out really well in a conversation with Bob Pomeroy. So if we get him in and have that conversation at the same time, I'm sure he can offer guidance of what happens in other communities and trends that he's seen. I mean, the trend for town administrators used to be you have to live in town was a thing for till probably 10 years ago. That was pretty much the standard. And that shifted because the job market has changed, the housing market has changed, and it didn't turn out to be really the end all be all that people thought it was. And so I think to a certain degree that's happening in the fire service and the police service to a certain extent.
Makes sense.
So
Okay.
I would recommend that we coalesce our questions. You had talked about 1 to 3 questions that each of the board members. I don't want to have any duplicate ones. We've had that with various interviews.
if you what I'm envisioning is that you do that in advance and I collate it. William and I collate it for you. So we
Yeah, I'd just like to see the coalesced thing to
Yeah,
just
we
make
can-
sure that we don't have a lot of overlap, so that we're not sort
Yeah.
of asking the same question over
Right.
and over.
right.
Because
Yep.
that could happen for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell me about how you deal with customer service. What's your customer service mentality? And then but that's what I've been doing with with our interview questions is, okay, these are all about customer
Similar,
service. So
yeah.
I'm gonna pick some way to ask a customer service question that gets us the response that we're all kind of looking for.
Okay.
So we can certainly help. Between William and I can help bring all of your thoughts together and then give you a document that you can then tweak and you can go from there.
And what do you think the time frame should be on those questions? I mean, I know we're still a few weeks
I-
away,
I
but does it
think-
make sense to get all the materials to board members to review the data from the assessment center?
Yeah, so the
And-
assessment center is October 1st. So
Yeah.
I think, we're probably looking at, we could probably plan on the first meeting in October to finalize your thoughts, or we can try to get Mr. Pomeroy on for the 21st of September and do all your questions and stuff, and then it's just bringing you the candidates.
How long does it take for assessment information to be returned to us? Is
I
that
think
pretty
I think
quick?
I think it's within a couple of days.
Okay.
Because they're doing all the assessors are here all day too, so they're doing that work.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they hand in all of that stuff before they leave for the day to Badge Quest.
Okay.
Would it make sense, I mean, to have, I know we typically would have that last Tuesday of September off, but to have just a special quick meeting just about this with Mr. Pomeroy if he's not available on the 21st? Just have the 28th.
Yeah, that would be up to you. I can send him an email this evening and say
I mean, technically I'm chair, so I could make that call today, but starting tomorrow, I probably can't.
I was thinking, I'm like, I would just
I
do
could,
it.
I'm just going with, I got the power right now.
Drunk with power.
Yes, but I love a meeting and I love to give myself time. Whereas on the 21st, lately our business meetings have been getting heavier schedules, and I don't want to feel rushed with this. I want to give it all the time it deserves.
I'm in agreement, especially coming up on October town meeting as
Right.
well. I really feel like we should jump on this as soon as possible. And then if we ask questions, then we're all on the same page as we, the assessment center results come in, and then we can determine when, once we get those candidates and the materials, we can set up those meeting dates. We can probably set up those meeting dates after our meeting with Badge Quest.
Okay, so are we all in agreement that September 28th we have a special Badge Quest
Yeah.
meeting? Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Awesome.
Is that a public meeting or executive session meeting? It can be public, right?
Yeah, because if we do it ahead of the assessment center, you won't have your 3 candidates.
Yep. Okay.
So we will be talking in generalities as
Great.
far as
Okay.
here's what the process is going to look like. The
What
nice
does an
thing.
assessment look like? This is
Right.
the information you'll be presented, things like that. Okay.
Yeah, well, they probably won't tell you what the assessment center is going to look like ahead of the assessment center.
They couldn't show you what somebody else's assessment looked like?
They're probably not going to do that.
Oh, interesting.
For a couple of reasons. One, and I can ask. He might say, "Oh, yeah, that's not a problem." But in my experience, they don't, because one, it's proprietary that they've developed themselves,
Oh, okay.
but also because it might be similar between the town they just did 3 weeks ago and now, and they want to make sure everybody's on the same footing. That's really the goal of the whole thing. And lastly, I just was reading an article about a company in Massachusetts that is being sued, I think, by the AG's office, because they were giving the practice exam that they gave out, and it was the same as the regular exam, and so it was a way to, I guess it was some kind of a backhanded thing they were doing, allegedly. So I'm wondering how much that would tighten that up too.
Gotcha.
But-
Okay.
If we've got samples, I will get you samples.
Yeah, but low expectations on the sample.
That's going to be my gut there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
And if Bob decides to come via Zoom, we could do a Zoom meeting too that night. I mean,
Yeah. Or
Yeah, all of us just do on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like I
Yep.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Perfect.
what's the date of that again?
September 28th.
I'm asking him about the 21st first. Yes.
Well,
So
I
you
think
don't have to have a separate. Or
we
you want
backed
to?
off that separate so that it has all the time it deserves. Because the 21st, I think, has already started to look pretty.
Do we have a lot
Heavy.
on the 21st? Oh,
we
that's
close-
next week.
Yeah, and we close the warrant, and we do a lot of other things. So I just imagine.
I was really hoping for another meeting in September. I don't know
Weren't you?
I don't know about you.
Yeah, good.
Me too.
Happy
Actually,
birthday! I got you a
that-
gift early.
Yeah.
That's
I did
really
dream
nice.
about it last night.
Really nice. Yeah. Yeah. All right. I have invited Mr. Pomeroy to the 28th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
via Zoom.
thank you.
All right, so are we all set with this item? Do you guys have anything else you wanna discuss?
No, I'm just wondering, in advance of that, if we wanna have circulated kind of our questions, just probably a prompt from TA office to board members to say, get your questions in, and you can just start coalescing those.
Okay.
Definitely.
Sure.
All right, so now we're on to select board goals, and my understanding of what that agenda item was for tonight is to potentially set the select board goal meeting. Is that everybody's understanding of that, or do you guys want to discuss our previous goals first, or how did you guys want to handle this?
So I had the same intention as you. I asked for this item to be on either a business meeting or a workshop meeting to talk about where we want to go from here. So we've had 2 goals meetings in the past 2 years, and I think they've gotten progressively better, but always room for improvement. So we can talk about what we want to see this time around, what we maybe don't want to see this time around, and put something again on the calendar so we can set it up and make sure we're doing it every year.
Yeah.
I didn't have any intention of reviewing our old goals, although I'm not against it. I just feel like we have a new board member. A lot has been accomplished. We have a new town administrator, and I sort of feel like we're all rowing in the right direction. So I don't really feel a need, but
Okay.
we certainly can.
I'd agree with that. I think, since we do have a new board member, we just need to kind of reset things.
Yeah.
And we've got a pretty good accounting of where things are at in terms of the goals that we set last year. I think those were very useful to the extent that we were with a temporary town administrator and in a pandemic and everything else that was going on. So I think we should just kind of almost take a greenfield approach to just and more be kind of forward thinking with setting new goals. So.
I know Joanne has a list of all of our meetings from, now until December, what's a workshop, what's a business meeting. Maybe we'll just put this off until next week and pick exactly which date when we have more members here, so there's only so many meetings I want to add before I upset everybody. So this one we can put off till next week, if everybody's okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that. That's really funny.
Perfect.
It's like we set all these meetings.
Yeah, if you just be like, well, I can never be absent again. All right, so we're good with that one. And then the last agenda item is the bylaw amendment for an adjustable town meeting date. And we kind of touched on that a little bit last week, and it's just to put some wording on the warrant to have town meeting vote on that, to adjust the bylaw. So does anybody have any discussion on that?
You want me to talk about it?
Sure.
Sure.
Love to talk about it. So William and I, we had been reviewing the language. Not that it's a blurb. It's not really that big. But the arbitrary consensus seems to be moving to a Saturday town meeting. The same basic setup. So the third week, second week and third week,
Second Saturday in May and third Saturday in October.
starting at say 10:30 a.m. or pick a time. That's kind of what we were thinking of trying to push forward. The Saturday town meeting especially works well daytime during the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's definitely worked out well. But I also think that just in general, getting people there on a Saturday instead of a weeknight at 7:30 at night. There's definitely some barriers there. I mean, there is on Saturday too, but I think it's probably less because when you get home from work and have dinner and tub the kids and then have to go out for a 7:30 town meeting, you're probably not coming.
Right.
Unless there's something on there that you're really into.
Right.
So that was kind of our thought. I have been talking a little bit with Dawn. We missed each other today, but she was looking at a move to a Saturday daytime, just in general as well. And so, I don't know, just seeing if people have any thoughts on that, or
I like it.
I do too.
The Saturday's been really nice, especially with outdoors. People who may have had childcare issues, having children there has been fun to see. Letting them be part of the process that they normally would have been asleep for. It's kind of It's nice.
Yeah, I mean there's going to be winners and losers, right? So, you know, the parents who've got 3 kids that are all in different soccer, you know, sports, whatever, traveling all around the area, potentially they'd prefer that on Monday night
Right.
as opposed to the weekend. I don't know. So I'm just wondering. I guess that's our opportunity for public input, is to go to town meeting and say, hey, what do you think about it?
Yep. Yep.
But I'm certainly not opposed to it. I've liked the Saturdays. That's worked well for my family for sure. And I think, you know, especially when I had smaller kids, I would have appreciated a weekend versus a weeknight. And I think that should work for seniors as well.
I was going to mention that too.
Yeah.
I think we've heard overwhelmingly from the senior community that they prefer a Saturday. We've received several correspondence over the past year about that. I think before we held the last town meeting.
There was a citizens petition
Yes.
attempting that in the last couple of years as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good memory.
And, you know, we're talking about October and May, so, you know, it seems like in a pretty good period in terms of weekend activity. When you start to get into the summer, things get really active for every single family.
Yeah.
October and May, not as much except for the sports thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of makes sense to me. I guess I would wonder from a facilities standpoint if there's anything scheduled around those times that might impact the schools. That would be my only logistical concern about it.
So before we finish drafting and you vote to close the warrant, we will have a conversation with Jay about what he thinks that looks like.
Good.
As far as facility availability.
Sounds good to me. I like it.
Awesome.
And actually, I mean, last May, we were able to coordinate and do graduation the same weekend and save some money that way, setting up a field only once instead of twice. So it may really work in the school district's favor as well.
Yeah, I don't, personally, I'm not in favor of doing it that way.
Okay.
Not because I don't want to piggyback with the schools, but because I think that it was very expensive to accomplish something we could have done a lot cheaper. So while we did save money because we were piggybacking with the schools are doing a graduation ceremony where it's a huge AV deal, right? You have all these, the families are there, the kids are walking across the stage. You want to make sure that you can see them get their diploma. It's a big deal. There's a lot of pomp and with that, and rightfully so. That's a huge accomplishment. With town meeting, I think we can definitely pare that down, and do it for a fraction of the cost, and I think still give people the same amount of information that they could absorb. For example, the AV stuff we put up last time is really just the warrant.
Yeah.
We're really just showing you on a screen the piece of paper that we handed to you.
Yeah.
Realistically. So I think that in some cases you might get a contentious issue that you really want to make sure that you have the visuals for, and I think that might be the outlier. But looking at our town meeting coming up, there's really no reason for it to have a screen. There's really not. I mean, we're gonna again be projecting the same thing that I just handed you on a piece of paper.
Yep. That
we're obligated to give you by law. You can't do away with that. So I think we can scale that back a little. So I'm gonna be speaking with Don about that as well. I'd like us to purchase our own PA system. I think you can do that for around $1,000, and then it's ours and we own it. We own the microphones, and for a regular sized town meeting, it'll be perfectly acceptable. If we have to do it outside, and then we can use it for other events too. William and I, if we have a concert on the lawn or something.
Oh, nice.
Or if we just want to talk down the hallway without leaving the office.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I did buy one that had Bluetooth, so we can put our phone music right through it.
Fantastic.
Podcasts, it'll be great. But I think we can pare that down as just my aside.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Okay, so you'll write that article for us as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we
Really
just did.
Awesome.
We?
Yeah.
It's a team effort.
It's the royal we.
Yes.
No, we actually worked on it before
Yeah.
having this conversation, so we're pretty much done.
Obviously
Pretty
kidding.
close. No, I know. But I
Thank you
really
both,
didn't
yeah.
do a lot for that part either.
So that about covers everything for tonight's meeting. Does anybody have any other follow-up thoughts on any of those items? All right, so
I do have one, seeing that it's only 7:26.
excellent.
So the select board goals, what do you guys think of maybe starting to create a list very similar to what we're doing with the interview questions, and we can just maybe put some thoughts down and have Evan filter through them so we don't have doubles, and that way they'll be ready for discussion in October, probably October is when we'll talk about it.
Sure.
That's
mean-
kind of what we did last fall too.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. Or do you want to just wait? We're gonna talk about the date at next week's meeting.
Yep.
I guess we can cover this same topic as well.
I'm happy to kind of start that process. I've already started to think about it since this came up as a topic tonight. I'd be interested, Evan, in kind of how you've done this, in Munson, and how you would envision it going.
I've never done this.
Okay.
I did try for 7 years and it didn't go anywhere. So I'm happy to be part of this. I have done a lot of strategic planning in the private sector, in the nonprofit world, so I think I have some experience there. But I think we'll be working on it together.
I find a ton of value in it.
Uh,
I think it helped us clarify to staff and yourself
Mhm.
what our priorities are, and it just helped kind of organize what our vision is
Yeah.
to orient all the decision making, and just day to day you sometimes lose the overall picture. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a very visionary CEO at a nonprofit I was at. He was there for only about 6 months. We had a CEO that left after I think it was 28 years. We had a 6-month person come in. He basically was a turnaround kind of CEO. And we did a huge strategic planning undertaking there. And he did some really neat concept stuff. And it really did make the environment of the organization much more cohesive. Even to the point where we had I'm losing the term now, but there's the 5 words that define the organization. And they were on everything. But what was neat is that, we had 650 employees, and it would come up with them just kind of organically, and it was really neat to see that permeate the organization. So I think there's a tremendous amount of value in setting direction and goal and getting the staff to buy in and everybody rowing in the same direction.
interesting.
I'm excited about it.
Me too.
So that could be another thing that we could think about, is some type of a statement of principles. In addition to goals and objectives, they're
Yep.
outcomes that you want to see, but some of the principles behind it, I've definitely done that in a couple of organizations. That it's helpful.
It is. The CEO, his name was Mike Coughlin. He actually was running Crotched Mountain for a while recently. But it was cool. One of the words that the staff, and it was the staff of the company that came up with these 5 words. We had a room. It was just paper all around, and it was just 400 words, and you whittled that down to the 5 core principles. And one of them was courage, and he actually painted it above his door. And it was kind of neat because every time you went and met with him, you kind of, I don't know. I thought it really grabbed you. I thought it was really, really cool stuff. And so it would be great to form a, mission, vision, some core principles, and then, build your plan around that.
I like that.
Me too.
Very nice.
Okay, so that's what we'll do.
Done.
Sounds good.
I have some strategic plans from communities that I've saved over the years, so I can send some of that out or put them in the Google Drive and can look at some samples of that stuff, because there's people doing some really innovative stuff.
Perfect.
Nice,
Love it.
Nice things.
Yeah, I feel like we do a lot of day to day in our business meetings and whatnot, and sometimes strategy just we never get around to it. And I feel like it's one of the most important functions of the board. So I'm excited to engage in that.
And one thing I may mention to you is that, if we do mission, vision, core values, select board goals, we should probably have a meeting with all of your department heads.
Yep.
kind of the rah-rah kickoff, get everybody on the same page. This is what we're thinking. Take feedback, have conversation about it. I think that's really helpful. Because then it's not just your plan that you then, you know, put on a shelf and say, you guys should probably do that. Like, we get it. We inculcate that right into the daily operation of
I
the
love that.
organization.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, you know, Carter talked about that a little bit but I think his approach was to kind of push it out. And I think it would be a little bit more value to just engage directly with some of the principal stakeholders to, you know, make sure that they understand we're all behind it, what we're thinking about it, and that they get an opportunity to feedback to us as well, to give them a sense that they're engaged and, you know, they've got some skin in the game.
Right. I mean, having a say is different than having a vote.
Right.
You have a vote, but if you give people a say, they're going to buy into what it is that you're trying to accomplish as the bigger picture for the town of Grafton.
I love that.
And seeing how the capital summit worked and having everybody in the room and everybody bouncing ideas, even if it wasn't concerning their department, I think it feeds into that too. So that was nice.
Yeah, I think that's going to be better in person.
Oh, for sure.
That was a little challenging, because I like everybody just sits in the room and you can tell by looking at people's faces, which obviously now is difficult, but that they have something to say, or maybe that, you know, you can draw stuff out of them and get everybody talking. It's hard to do that on Zoom.
They might not take a phone call.
Right.
Yeah.
William and I did rewatch that footage today just to get a little
Pretty classic.
just a little chuckle at lunchtime. Did you watch it?
I watched some of it.
I have to push it out to the board. Yeah, hour and 3 minutes is about where you want to be.
Yep.
Okay.
If you want to get a good chuckle.
Good to know.
All right. Well, if that's all we have, I will take motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
All right. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Good night.